Everybody knows the Bloods, red rags, rap lyrics, movies. You've seen it everywhere. But what if I told you it all started with a small group of young men on one street in Compton? This is the story of the Piru Street Boys, the spark that lit a war still burning 50 years later. Compton, California, early 1970s, a city in transition. Factories were shutting down, jobs were disappearing, drugs were beginning to pour into neighborhoods, and young black men were left to defend themselves however they could. On Piru Street, right near Compton High School, a group of young men formed a crew. They weren't thinking about national recognition. They weren't thinking about colors. They were thinking about holding down their block. They called themselves the Piru Street Boys. Two names stand out from those early days: Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens. They were among the founders who set the tone for what Piru would become. Back then, the Piru Street Boys weren't Bloods. They were just a neighborhood set. But across Los Angeles, a storm was rising. A new group called the Crips, founded by Raymond Washington and Stanley Tookie Williams, was spreading aggressively. They were pulling smaller sets under their umbrella, sometimes with persuasion, sometimes with violence. The Piru Street Boys resisted. They weren't going to fold, and that resistance made them a target. Battles between pirates and Crips became some of the earliest sparks of the gang war that still rages today. But Piru wasn't alone. Other crews like the Brims, the Athens Park Boys, the Denver Lanes, and the Bishops were also fighting back against Crip expansion. Slowly, these groups found common ground. They needed an alliance to survive. That alliance became known as the Bloods. The word blood came from prison, where brothers called each other that as a sign of unity. On the streets, it became a banner to unite everyone standing against the Crips. The Piru Street Boys became one of the cornerstones of this new identity. That's why even today, you hear Piru called out by name. Sets across Compton and beyond still identify as Piru First, Blood Second, Looters Park Piru, Elm Street Piru, West Side Piru. The name carried weight. As years passed, Piru's influence spilled into culture. The anthem Piru Love in the 90s became a soundtrack for Blood identity. Suge Knight, co-founder of Death Row Records, came out of the Looters Park Piru, taking the street's reputation into the music industry. Rappers like DJ Quik and YG have shouted out Piru in their songs, cementing it in hip-hop history. What began as a local crew became a global reference point, but with recognition came consequences. The crack era of the 1980s fueled violence between Bloods and Crips on a scale that devastated entire neighborhoods. Police responded with crackdowns like Operation Hammer, flooding Compton and South Central with raids and mass arrests. Generations of young men ended up behind bars, while families and communities paid the price. Piru's name spread coast to coast, but so did the bloodshed. Still, you can't tell the story of the Bloods without Piru. They were there at the beginning. They were the heart that pumped life into the red rag. And they remained distinct, holding on to their name, their identity, and their legacy, even as the Bloods grew into one of the most infamous gangs in American history. The Piru Street Boys never set out to build an empire. They never thought their name would end up in rap lyrics, on red bandanas, or in headlines around the world. But their fight against the Crips lit a fire that shaped decades of gang culture. From one block in Compton to a worldwide identity, Piru's story proves that every street has a story, and some streets change history forever. This is the OC Street Files, the Piru Street Boys.